Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending our webinar, Secure Your Cloud Apps and Services. I'm your host today, Lindsay Hedke, Demand Generation Manager here at Optiv. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. First, this webinar is being recorded and will be available in the next few days for on-demand viewing. You can see here on the console in front of you that we have several resources you can use during or following the webinar. This includes some resources we think you'll find valuable when it comes to your cloud security program, our speaker bios, and social sharing buttons to the left. There's also a Q&A chat box on the right, and you'll find some of the same widgets on your toolbar as you scroll to the bottom of your screen. Regarding the Q&A chat box, we will be having someone monitoring the chat box throughout the webinar and compiling the questions for the Q&A period at the end. However, we may not get to every question. If we don't answer your question, we will follow up after the webinar. Now on to the webcast. Let me take a moment to introduce our speakers. We are honored to be joined today by experts from both Optiv and our valued strategic partner, Symantec. Todd Weber is the VP of Partner Research and Strategy here at Optiv. He brings over 15 years of cloud services experience to both Optiv and the partner research area. Over his career, Todd has worked with some of the largest companies in the world. Todd is joined today by Brian Calhoun-Jones. Brian is a partner architect here at Optiv. Brian specializes in endpoint and data loss prevention and has worked for both Optiv and Symantec. And finally, we have Dina Somcik, the Senior Director of Outbound Product Management at Symantec. Dina has over 25 years of technology experience and focuses specifically on cloud security and Symantec CASB in the product management group. To get things started today, I'll turn it over to Todd Weber to provide Optiv's perspective and approach to cloud security. Todd, over to you.
Thanks, Lindsay. I appreciate it. And good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, depending upon where you are. I appreciate you guys taking the time to spend a little time with us today to talk about cloud security. And for the most part, some of this is not going to be that much of a surprise to you, but we hope we're giving you insights on necessarily what you're going to run into as you go through your journey here of cloud development and cloud migrations. Just to start off quickly, again, this isn't necessarily a surprise to anybody that hey, cloud's taking off and cloud is actually expanding. And whether or not it's infrastructure as a service or platform as a service or software as a service, many companies have chosen to move some components of their data out to those, or in some cases, they've moved all of their data out to cloud applications or cloud services or cloud workloads. And with that comes certain responsibilities or certain changed responsibilities, in that you've lost a little bit of your visibility. You've lost some other control points that you had when the data was on your premise. So interestingly, so solutions like CASB solutions, other cloud-driven solutions become necessary to help clients move forward with their data strategies there out in the cloud. And as you quickly look at CASB deployment trends, interestingly, as many people who are moving their data to the cloud, not a whole lot of people, or I say not a whole lot of people, but many people have, the CASB journey has just started, really. And many companies and enterprises haven't deployed a CASB, or they've half deployed a CASB. They've maybe using it for the shadow IT use case, but not necessarily for the data protection use cases that really follow along with that. So why do people care? Why do people need things like CASB? And, as I alluded to a little bit before, what you typically have in cloud is, like I said, you've lost a couple of visibility components. You maybe lost a little data control, but because you've lost that control doesn't necessarily obviate, or it doesn't at all obviate your custodial responsibility to protect that data, as well as that is still your responsibility. So, how do you merge that responsibility, even though you've maybe lost some of the control that up to a cloud provider? And what we see here at Optiv is, companies struggling to, how do they manage a data policy on their premise as well as a data policy in the cloud? And what you essentially have to do is it's the same data policy, whether or not, whatever because you've made certain infrastructure decisions or certain decisions to move certain applications to the cloud, it's still the same data protection policy. So you need to figure out ways to use tools and technology to give you the same sorts of visibility and the same sorts of protection controls, and that's not very easy to do. So what we have and what we're recommending is looking for tools and technologies that allow you to do that in the most ready fashion. In other words, if you can create a single policy engine in a single piece of technology that protects both your data functions on your premise as well as in your cloud, then the better off you're going to be. Meaning that if you don't have to retrofit the same data policy back into a different technology, that becomes very difficult. So what we're recommending is looking at tools like Symantec, who have both an ability to look at your premise data as well as your cloud data, because that's, as I showed that many in the trend are actually moving to the cloud. Many have actually, are going to stay at least in a hybrid cloud environment for many years to come. And, especially the larger organizations are going to be in some form of hybrid cloud for a very long time. So you'll have certain data components on your premise and certain data components in your cloud. I'm going to turn it over here to Dina for a little bit, and we're going to talk in the specifics of how Symantec views the cloud world. Go ahead, Dina.
Why, thank you very much, and it's good to talk to everybody today. As you adopt the cloud, there's a lot of different elements, and a lot of organizations find themselves in a sort of cloud chaos mode as they have officially adopted platforms such as Office 365 or G Suite or Box or Salesforce. These are common sanctioned platforms to adopt. As you're moving your data centers and your infrastructure and adopting that infrastructure as a service approach, if you're building systems in Amazon and all of the work that goes around that. And then you've got the use of mobile apps going on within your workforce. And then, really basically anytime you have an issue, someone's going to find a solution that could be a cloud solution. So there's a lot going on in the cloud as you're dealing with your organization. And so you need to get your arms around that. You've got to protect your data. You need to protect yourself against attacks. And your end users are in a lot of different places. It's not just who's sitting at the enterprise behind your traditional perimeter. You've got end users who are working out of their homes, and they're traveling for work, and they may be in remote offices. And then each user has multiple devices. So they may have their company-sponsored laptop, they may have a company mobile device, or they may use their own mobile device or their own laptop. There's a lot that's going on out there for a proliferation of endpoints. And all those endpoints are going to all of these different cloud applications and platforms in order for them to do their work. And then it's not just from the endpoint to the cloud platform, it is also between cloud systems as data is shared between different cloud apps and over the course of doing business or over the course of trying to enable your employees to do what they need to do. So you've got a lot of data moving around and in a lot of different places. And then layered on top of this, we know that there are bad actors out there that are targeting cloud. They're targeting cloud accounts. Malware is looking for credentials to steal. There are brute force attacks going on all the time. Once a bad actor gets some login credentials, they're going to try to see all the different places where it could work. And then once a piece of malware goes and maybe gets into a cloud environment, or bad actor compromises an account and gets into a cloud environment, then they're looking at what they can do with that access. So it can be data theft, it can be destruction, it can be proliferation of bad stuff. A bad actor could even take over your platform and use it for their own purposes to distribute their own malware or to perform their own actions. So something to keep an eye on. There's a lot of different facets to it, and getting your arms around the controls are really important. So how do you control this? You can, and this is where CASB comes into play. And there's a bunch of different technologies that are being replicated in the CASB technology in order to provide the security and the visibility over what's happening in the cloud for your organization. Because cloud's awesome. It really enables you to get a lot done. It's got a lot of efficiencies, but it is also imperative to apply the security controls. So with a Cloud Access Security Broker, a CASB, such as CloudSoc from Symantec, you can monitor both sanctioned and unsanctioned cloud services. You can see what is being done in different cloud services. You can enforce context-aware access control policies. So you can set up a policy if a person is accessing sensitive data in a sanctioned platform and they're on a managed device and they've got all the right things in play, then you give them free access. But if, say, that person is on an unmanaged device or they're in a very strange physical location, they're acting in a really abnormal fashion, you can set up a policy that will recognize that something unusual is going on here that could be identified as high risk and maybe narrow or close down some of those access permissions. So a system that can do that is going to be really valuable to you. Also, you've got all that data moving around in the cloud, and you've got sensitive data out there. So a system that can automatically identify and protect that sensitive content that's out in your cloud applications and that's moving around between applications and between your end users and those applications is going to be important. Malware exists. It's always an ongoing issue. This has been bread and butter for Symantec for decades. So a solution that's going to look for malware and fix a malware situation for you is going to be important. You don't want malware proliferating using the cloud, and so a CASB can perform that function for you as well. And then finally, you need to know what happens because incidents occur, things happen. It's going to be really important that you're keeping an eye on it and that you've got good records and you've got good logs so that when you need to investigate an incident, you have the data you need so you can track back to what happened and you can remediate what your situation might be. So that's important from an incident response perspective, also because there are a lot of compliance rules out there that do require you to have really good data, and a CASB can provide that for you. So how does it work? How do the pieces fit together? When Gartner describes CASB, they often will divide it into three categories. They expect a CASB to provide visibility to you, so you know what apps are being used, what actions are being taken in those apps, where is your sensitive data, and what's going on with access to that data, and to see it and to document it. If you can't see what's going on, you can't do anything about it. And so this is a really important functionality. Use case number 2, which is really critical, is that data security. You've got sensitive data out there, you need to protect it. In order to protect it, you need to identify it, find it, and put controls around it. Who gets access to it, and where is it allowed to be shared? And then finally, threat protection. This is another big category. That's where you're looking for the bad stuff, for compromised accounts, for malicious insiders, for malware infection, all of this kind of activity. All right. So when the pieces come together, you've got they usually operate with an API integration directly with major cloud services. So your CASB should talk directly to your important platforms such as Office 365 or AWS or some of these broad range of these important platforms directly to see what's happening within those platforms. But you also need to look at live traffic that's going to and from. So an inline view and control point is really important in with your CASB. So our recommendation is that you use a combination of those two capabilities. And then also, CASB should take in logs. It should take in data from other systems that you have so that you can expand on its visibility. So typically, Shadow IT discovery is based off of log ingestion, and then your data security and active threat protection leverages a combination of your API integrations to directly with cloud services and that inline visibility and control you get with a CASB gateway. So here's our top 10 wish list for use cases and things you want to be able to do with a CASB. Number one, who in my organization is using risky cloud apps, and how often are they using them? So what apps are being used, and who's using them, and are they risky, and is there a lot of use going on? It's pretty typical that an organization will find that there are many services that are in use, and you can identify some of them are going to be perfectly fine, some of them you want to keep an eye on, some of them may be an unacceptable use and something that you need to take care of. Number two would be, once you discover what your shadow IT usage is, how can you automate control over that use? Because some of those services are services you really don't want people using. Or if a service gets compromised, you want to be able to do some mitigating factors around the use of that service. So if you know it's being used, how do you automate control over that? And that, I think, is an important capability. GDPR is top of mind for a lot of organizations, as is PCI compliance or HIPAA compliance. So you also want to make sure that you're using cloud services that are good choices when you're looking at this from a compliance perspective. Data. Your data is really important, and you do have that sensitive data. So you need to be able to track it, and you need to be able to automate either remediation or prevention actions to prevent your data from being exposed to the public or stolen or lost or otherwise unsafely handled. And the more you can automate that, the better off you are. And as we just talked about earlier in the presentation, it's really valuable if you can use your existing DLP policies or the enterprise-wide DLP policies that you already have crafted for anywhere that your data may be located, including in cloud services. So how about if you can do that and just take the DLP system you've got applied. It works on endpoints, maybe it works on your email, you've got it applied to your data centers. We'll just take those same policies and remediation workflows and apply them to your data in the cloud. And how do you identify if you have user accounts that are compromised? Is there a way to identify that? Can you have a system that can automatically tell you where you need to be targeting, what you need to be focused on, and to mitigate the potential exposure that comes from a compromised account? Is there malware in the cloud, and how do you deal with that? Can that be get that identified reliably with a highly efficient and effective system and stop malware in its tracks? How can you use authentication with your users to increase the security level and to make your security flexible to handle your remote users as they're accessing cloud accounts and interacting with your sensitive data? How can you take advantage of authentication to increase your security while still enabling your workers to get their work done? Can you find out if you've got corporate data moving over into personal accounts? And is there something you can do to prevent that from happening, or at least track if that happens? Hopefully you've got something in line that you can prevent that happening. And that's something that CloudSock and that CASB should be able to provide for you. And then the encryption. For that data that is really, really sensitive, you may want to go full on into encryption. How do you encrypt that kind of data and then set up controls over who has access and be able to revoke that access when you need to? So this is where we use the CASB fundamentals to apply the controls. So you want to understand and monitor risk exposure across different public cloud apps and infrastructure, and do you have high-risk situations involved, and how do you mitigate that? Govern access to your sensitive data and protect it, and prevent and mitigate the risk of a data breach or exposure. Get threat protection in place, get it automated so that you're protecting against your threats. You're both detecting them, you're remediating a situation, blocking proliferation of threats, and then able to investigate when you have had an issue with the data that you need. And then pull it all together to meet your compliance requirements as they are set forth in the regimes that you need to regulate for. All right, so visibility. One of the things that people use the visibility for is to get that visibility over sensitive data that's in public cloud. That comes up over and over again from a compliance perspective. There's GDPR-specific views, as a lot of organizations are leaning in, considering those requirements. Every time you go back and you look at this, a shadow IT assessment is really important. What apps are being used? Do you have a risk analysis? Do you have an idea about the risk associated with those apps? And how are you limiting the use of high-risk cloud apps in your organization? Another one that's not really security, but also very practical, what are you spending on cloud apps and services? And do you have subscriptions that you're paying for that are not being used? And do you have, say, multiple platforms being used for the same purpose, or multiple different accounts that are set up by different organizations within your bigger organization that could be consolidated in order to help with costs? And then just monitoring what's happening in the cloud, where are my things at, and also a way to highlight when you've got something that's important. So not just don't drown yourself in data, but data that's highly useful and highly actionable. Data security front and center for CASB, and CloudSoc comes with a strong data security component to it. There's a native DLP capability that's highly effective and efficient. It is able to detect sensitive content. It can identify and remediate if you've got exposures or block unsafe sharing of data right in line with its capabilities. You can define access properties for your sensitive data. So if a person, this work group has access to this data, but they only have access if they're, say, in the corporate environment, or they only have access if they are on a managed device, but they don't if they are not. These kinds of things, this user has special access because of who they are. You can do a lot of things around that, and or any user that doesn't meet this set of safety requirements, or this risk level doesn't get access to this data. You can do some things like that, or you can read it, but you can't download it. There's all sorts of granular controls that can be put in place, and this is really valuable. It helps you prevent the unintended sharing of really sensitive data to folks who are outside the company. It can help you prevent the upload of sensitive data to personal accounts. And the more you can automate this, the better off you are. You want really good, really effective automated data classification here, so that the system's going to identify when you've got something sensitive, and it can apply that policy control. You're not trying to get ahead of this with a whole bunch of manual work, because that just does not scale. In threat protection, one of the things I think I really recommend you look at, CASB started a lot with visibility and data security, and the threat protection elements came in a little bit later in the development of CASB technologies. This is something that Symantec does really well. This is a long history of what we deliver in threat protection, and so we're able to apply the full Symantec threat protection capabilities to protecting your cloud accounts, protecting your data that's in the cloud, and to protect you against malware and other threats that are coming in. So with our CloudSoc CASB, there's integration with the threat intelligence, with the anti-malware engines, with the reputation engines, with cloud sandboxing, all of the things that you can put in play to protect your organization against threats that are leveraging the cloud and coming after you. So this is a real differentiator for us, because we have such a long history and such a rich set of threat protection technologies that we can apply to the cloud for you using CloudSoc. In addition to all of those technologies, you want to be able to identify if you've got high-risk users. Now, a high-risk user could represent an account where credentials have been compromised and it's not that user at all who's operating the account. It could represent an account that's been taken over by ransomware or some other destructive malware that's acting in a very strange way. It could represent an insider who may be a malicious insider, someone who's getting ready to leave the company, for example. And so there's really sophisticated user and entity behavior analytics in the CloudSoc CASB that can identify when you've got abnormal user behavior. So anytime you've got a user who starts to act outside of what is normal behavior, CloudSoc will identify that. So Basically, at all times, there's a behavior analysis going on and behavior profiling going on in a data science-based engine within CloudSock for your users and your actions. And each user is continuously assigned a dynamic threat score. So what you're hoping is that each user has a low threat score, which means they're not a threat. But as that user starts to act in more abnormal ways and in higher risk ways, then that threat score will elevate and get higher and higher. And individual actions also get rated for a threat score based on their risk or abnormal characteristics. And then that dynamic threat score can be used to trigger automated policy responses in order to step up the security around that user behavior. So that user's access might be totally open if their threat score is really low, but if suddenly their threat score elevates to a really high level, then you can automatically tighten down and reduce their access to things like sensitive data and sensitive systems by using the threat score. And then the other nice thing about the system is it automatically gives you a mapping of what the user's been doing. So you can just go in there and with a click, you see, okay, who are my high-risk users? One more click on the user gives you a visual map to see what services they've been going to, what kind of actions have they been taken, what kind of policies have been violated. Often, with just a glance, you can get a sense of what's going on with that user, which really gives you a step forward to mitigating any possible problem that could come from that user behavior. So you're not digging through a bunch of different data. You don't have to somehow figure out who the risk is or what they're doing. It's set up so that it gives you this kind of view along the way to make it really easy to quickly identify if you have a problem, identify what the problem is, and hopefully you've got automated controls already set up to have responded and then to do further response as necessary. So that's a really special capability within CloudSock that saves a lot of time. And then finally, when an incident happens, you've got to have a good set of data. So a way to find the data that you need and to be able to parse it out to solve your problem quickly. And with CloudSock, there's really good visualization and search tools and really good log data and security incident data in there so that it's all normalized to present to you in a way that's very easy to digest and is granular, and yet it's also easy to find all of the relevant logs for the issue that you may be addressing. And then for everyone who is using, say, a SIM system, some other system to analyze incidents and do incident analysis, you can easily export this data out to one of your bigger SIM system approaches. So if you're using ArcSight or QRadar or Splunk, these are all things that you can use with CloudSock. That's your basic CASB. If you're looking for a full-featured CASB solution, the kind of thing that Gartner and Forrester says, this is what a CASB needs to offer to you, and they need to do a really good job doing it. They need to give you great visibility and intelligence on the cloud apps that you're using. It needs to give you really good data security with automated data classification and full DLP capabilities. And it needs to protect you from threats, from malware, from compromised accounts, from malicious insider. It needs to be able to do all of that. It also needs to have the direct API integrations with your major cloud platforms and provide you inline preventative controls using a gateway. All of these things are in the list of what a fully featured CASB delivers. And that's what CloudSock comes with. You get CloudSock, you get all of those things, plus all the extended intelligence and capabilities that come with the semantic portfolio. We consider that CASB 1.0. If you've delivered all of that, you should be sitting in the leaders quadrant of the Magic Quadrant. You should be, that's a strong CASB solution. But nobody has only CASB in their organization. Nobody would just buy that one thing. We have any organization is going to have a number of different technologies in play, a number of different types of security that they're using to protect their critical assets. And not just their assets in the cloud, but their assets that are on-prem and their assets that are sitting on endpoint devices. And they've got data centers they need to protect. And they've got specialized security that is helping them out. So we at Symantec have taken an approach. We don't believe CASB should be a separate thing. It shouldn't be an island of technologies. It should integrate with your extended enterprise security solutions so that you can leverage shared intelligence and you can leverage multiple control points through that integration to boost and increase and improve what it is that you're getting out of your security. So you'll get more intelligence, more control, and you need to be able to automate it as well because nobody wants to be drowning in too much data or too much manual activity. The more you can automate, the better off you are. And so what we've done is we work to integrate our CASB, our Cloud SOC, with other technologies. One of the first ways that people use it is an integration with their secure web gateway. So you can automate control over shadow IT use of cloud apps with an integrated approach using a secure web gateway like our Proxy SG or our web security service and CASB in order to get the great visibility and discovery over shadow IT use of cloud apps with Cloud SOC and the CASB, and then automate controls in the secure web gateway. You can use an integration with your enterprise DLP to use the same DLP policies for cloud apps, for data that's in cloud apps, as you do for data that's in other parts of your enterprise. You can use an integration with advanced malware protection to really boost the threat protection that you deliver to your assets in the cloud, in addition to all of the assets that you have in other places. You can take advantage of encryption because you want to be able to encrypt data that's highly sensitive that goes to the cloud, and you may also want to encrypt data that's in other places. Maybe you want that data to stay encrypted as it moves out of the cloud and goes other places. So an integration between CASB and your encryption solution can help you do that. You want to leverage integration with your endpoints. Endpoints are all over the place. We know this, and there's some great capabilities if you have an integrated CASB and endpoint solution. You can track what roaming users are doing from a shadow IT analysis perspective. You can help integrate and manage endpoints into your CASB oversight with your to get to work your gateway with your endpoints. There's a lot of things you can do there with that integration. Email and messaging is another big area. It's not just file sharing that's out there. You're using email, you're using messaging. You probably have email security. I hope you have email security in place. That's your number one attack point for a lot of bad stuff. So can you fully protect your email? Are you looking at your perimeter email security? What about inside your cloud systems if you're using cloud email? And then finally, how can you leverage user authentication? Can you dynamically leverage your user authentication to step up your security over user activity and yet stay flexible enough to enable your users to do all the work that they need to do? And so these are all great areas of value that we've worked on with Cloud SOC to deliver what we call CASB 2.0. So CASB 1.0, if you hit all the things that the analysts described for CASB, then you can get a fully featured CASB. But we think CASB 2.0 is really, really powerful, an integrated solution that works with your pantheon of security technologies that is in use. So you get the most out of CASB and you get the most out of all of these other systems as well. So just to dive in a little bit, the way that Cloud SOC works with our secure web gateways, there's a number of different pieces in the integration here. Now, if you get Cloud SOC and you have one of our secure web gateways, then you automatically get this. This comes with your Global Intelligence Network subscription that's part of your secure web gateway. And so here's how it all fits together. You can chain your proxies from us all the way up to your CASB, so that helps with traffic management. You can automate log collection and log uploads to Cloud SOC from your secure web gateways, and that helps to automate your shadow IT discovery and visibility using that capability in CASB and what's coming from the secure web gateways. But it takes it a much bigger step forward. There's an automated integration and intelligence sharing that goes from the CASB down to your secure web gateways. So all of the application intelligence that comes into the Cloud SOC audit shadow IT discovery capability is shared down via our global intelligence network to your semantic secure web gateways. And that way, for those folks who are managing your secure web gateways, you can automate your visibility and control and monitoring and management of the use of the Shadow IT use of these cloud apps directly in the gateways, directly in the interface, and as you manage your secure web gateways. And it's not just apps. It's not like, okay, this app we do this with. It's attributes for the apps. So right now we track about 25,000 different cloud services within our intelligence system, and we track 120 different risk attributes per app. So you could go into your secure web gateways and say, okay, any application that doesn't meet this risk profile, block, or any service that doesn't meet this risk profile, report, alert, monitor. Or any app that's been compromised in the last 3 months, automatically redirect to change your password, or send an alert and require follow-up. There's a lot of things you can do there to put those kinds of controls and to automate them, taking advantage of that intelligence. So as the intelligence feed changes, the apps that are covered, as they change their risk profile, the control stays in place based on what's important to you from a security perspective, and then it's applied everywhere that it needs to be applied. So there's a lot of real benefit to putting these pieces together. And then on the back end, we've done a lot of work to help streamline and simplify administration and deployment to make the whole thing just work really easily together. And we've taken the same approach to DLP, and this is a biggie for a lot of organizations. They're really concerned about protecting their data. Maybe you already have an enterprise DLP approach, or you need to go all in on DLP, not just for cloud, but for everywhere. So while CloudSock comes with great DLP just for your cloud apps, and you can just turn it on and get it rolling with that, if you combine it with our Semantic Enterprise DLP solution, you get an even more powerful solution. And here's how it works. You've got your Semantic DLP solution in place, and it may be monitoring endpoints and data centers and email, and you've got a central management console, and you've worked up all these policies that are applied to these different channels. Well, by combining it with CloudSock, you just extend the policies that you have to cover your data in the cloud. So all those same policies go out to a Symantec Cloud DLP inspection engine that sits in the cloud with CloudSock. And so what happens is CloudSock interfaces with hundreds of different applications, and it can take that data, get it inspected in your enterprise DLP inspection engine that's also in the cloud, that is managed and guided by your centralized management console for your DLP. So all those policies that you have set up, they're universal policies, they get applied to the inspection of all the data that's happening in the cloud, that's being accessed and controlled through that control point of the CASB. And then when there's a violation, when you have an incident, the response workflows are also shared and guided from your centralized DLP management system. And then it's activated using CloudSock and any of your other integrated response systems that you've got set up. So the beauty here is you're getting all of that, the granular control capabilities and all of that access and visibility over all these different cloud apps for all of the data, but you're managing it, you've got oversight, and you've got control over it, just like you do for all of your other DLP channels for data to enable you to protect them. And that is a huge time savings, and it's a huge boost to what you're able to do to control your data and protect it. So we think this is a really sweet solution and a great way for organizations who want enterprise-wide DLP to cover everything, including cloud apps and services. I want to talk a little bit about user authentication. I love user authentication. I think this is a really, user auth and single sign-on are really great technologies. They really are important security to adopt in your organization. And CloudSock works with any SAML-compliant single sign-on or user auth solution. However, and here, well, let me just start here. Here's how it works. When a user goes to log into a cloud service, your CASB would use that user auth or single sign-on to authenticate the user. So before the user is allowed to have a live session with that cloud service, they have to go through and pass authentication, which is really valuable, keeps a lot of bad stuff out, gets the people who should be getting in. But once that happens, in a typical CASB scenario, that's it. Once a user is authenticated into the live session, they can do whatever they want, and the user authentication falls out of the picture. But what we've done is, using our VIP user authentication solution, multi-factor solution, there's an integration so that CloudSock and our CASB can continue to use VIP and user auth in a dynamic way to be adaptive to that user for a step up of authentication. So say, for example, okay, user goes into Cloud App, they have to authenticate in to start with. But what if that user suddenly has an elevated threat score? They're acting really strange, they're doing a lot of high-risk activities, and their threat score elevates up really high. Well, in a typical scenario, the CASB has two choices. It can say, okay, let that user keep doing what they're doing, and maybe just keep an eye on it, or block that user, stop them from doing what they're doing. But there's not a lot of other options in the system. With an integration with our user authentication, you do have a nice additional option. You can trigger another round, a second factor round of authentication back to that user. So here's a scenario. Say, for example, you've got a user, they do stuff normally, all of a sudden they're logging in and they're accessing a bunch of sensitive data from a very strange endpoint location. They're out of country and they're doing a lot more download activity than they normally do. Well, this would cause an elevated threat score, and you would cause a situation where you need to decide what to do. If you have this integration, you could just trigger another round of authentication. And if that user is able to pass another round of user authentication, then you can say, okay, well, that's probably just a user doing something that's abnormal, but still the user who I'm expecting. Let's allow this activity to continue. Or if they fail that authentication, then, okay, now we have another confirmation that something weird's going on, we're going to actually block. And what that does is give you the opportunity to stop bad stuff while still enabling legitimate work to go on. It's a nice little additional feature when you have that integration. All right, so we talked to customers who've deployed CloudSock and deployed our CASB and asked them what were the critical things that they came out of their migration to the cloud and adoption of CASB. And here's the top three things that we got. One would be around that securing sanctioned applications, those official corporate applications, is really necessary, but it's not really enough. Number two would be if you go into the big platforms like G Suite or Office 365, you need to look at those in a bigger way than they started out looking at. It's not just file sharing that's the issue. And then three, really think about scale, because there's a lot of volume of activity that's going on with the cloud. So just to dig down to these a little bit, and by the way, these are legitimate big giant customers who have come back with these very specific responses on this. So this is a pretty common experience. So lesson number one, secure your sanctioned apps. So identify the business accounts that you have out there and the applications that you have out there. Get security around those and use the APIs, use the inline, use the things that you can to secure that. But there's a lot more activity than that. You need to also have oversight over personal accounts and personal account activity. And this is that helps you prevent sensitive data from being shared out to someone's personal Office 365 account or their personal Dropbox account or whatever they might be using there. So getting some oversight on that is important. Plus, there's unsanctioned use of unsanctioned apps. So while you've discovered the apps that are out there and maybe you put controls over the particularly risky ones, you may not want to block everyone off from anything, from any other cloud app. So getting oversight under the use of these not official services is also very valuable. So monitor the apps that are being used, know what's being used, block those that are high risk, and then apply data security and threat protection controls to transactions with these unsanctioned apps, so that you get your arms around security here as well. So that, I think, is really important. And this is why it's really important that you use CASB gateway in addition to an API integration when you're doing your deployment. Because these personal accounts and these unsanctioned accounts, this is where you get your oversight over those activities. And then in addition to looking at logs and log visibility to identify all of that broad use of cloud apps and services. All right, so lesson number 2, it's not just GDrive. If you're a G Suite user, there's a lot going on in G Suite. They've got many different services and apps, and the challenge is a lot of CASBs just look at GDrive. That's all they're looking at the files that you've put in GDrive and putting controls there. But you'd also need to look at your Gmail. We've noticed that 75% of your content is probably in your Gmail, not your GDrive. And then you've got sensitive data that is going out and activities that are going out in a lot of different places. So when you choose a CASB, you want one that's looking in depth in these major platforms. And in the case of CloudSock, we're looking at all of these different elements of G Suite when we're providing your security and giving you extensive coverage. Who's doing what objects are being shared, what activity is going on, apply controls where needed. And that works exactly the same way with Office 365. A lot of folks are looking at, if you get solutions, they might look at OneDrive, give you OneDrive capabilities. They might look at SharePoint as well, and they might give you some oversight there. But there's a lot else going on out there in the Microsoft world. You want to make sure that you've got good oversight over your email here as well. And by the way, there's a big difference between email security and CASB email security. And they work in conjunction with each other in a really beautiful fashion. So classic email security is your email gateway. It's looking to protect you from bad stuff coming into your organization from outside your organization. So you want to have a real good shield there, and it may have DLP applied there to prevent sensitive data from going out of your organization via email. And it's looking at that perimeter area. And hopefully you've got something really good that's doing that. But inside your cloud email, if you've gone to Office 365 or G Suite and you're using cloud email, that perimeter doesn't look at transactions between employees within your organization. It doesn't look at data that's at rest in your cloud email system. But a CASB can do that, and CloudSock does that for you. So it can apply CASB oversight to person intra-organization email activity, and it can provide CASB protection to data that's sitting at rest in your email cloud system. And this is a huge volume of your activity in Office 365 or G Suite. So I think this is a really important thing to keep an eye on. And then finally, scale. Scale matters. You've got X number of users in your organization. Each user has multiple devices probably that they're using. They're probably using multiple primary cloud services to perform their work. We know typically we'll see Office 365, Box, and Salesforce all in use in an organization. That's probably the most common combination. And AWS, of course. There's tons of AWS use out there. And then there's thousands of cloud transactions because they're transacting, they're doing different things all the time. Lots of objects, lots of users. There's a huge volume of activity. So it's really important to have a system that can automatically do what needs to be done. It's tracking all of this stuff. It can scale to the volume you need. It will automatically identify and classify your sensitive data, tell you where it is, and if it's being shared in an unsafe manner. It will automatically identify when you've got users who are going kind of weird and acting in abnormal and high-risk levels and highlight those to you and can automate responses to that activity. It can really help you find the things that are important and automate response as much as you can, and then alert and track all the stuff that you need to track. And that way you're not wasting your time with a large volume of stuff that's not important, or you're trying to figure out what's important amongst the volume of what's happening. A system that helps you with that's going to be really important. That's something we've really focused on in CloudSock with our user behavior analytics capability, with the automated data classification in the DLP capabilities, and just the way the user interface is built out in CloudSock to help just get you to the things you need to know and prevent you having to waste any time digging through stuff that's just not that important. If you need that granular data, it's all there. You just dive down into it and you can get access to it. But a lot of times you just need to know what's important right now, how do I act on that, and let's get to what I need to do. All right, so just in a summary here, securing your sanctioned apps is really necessary, but it's not enough. You need to be looking at personal accounts and unsanctioned apps. And you need to be able to enforce your corporate policies and maintain user privacy. So that's a balance as you go in and set up your policy controls. G Suite and Office 365 are a lot more than just GDrive and Drive. So make sure you're looking at all the different critical apps and that your solution can go broad and deep in these platforms to provide you the oversight you need. And then finally, scale matters. So large volume of activity to keep your arms around here, and a solution that will help you do that in an automated fashion is going to be incredibly valuable. So it can see what's happening, it can manage it, and then it highlights that which you need to know and can help automate what needs to be acted on right away. You have a lot of different cloud security options out there. There's a bunch of different, you can have a bunch of different products from a bunch of different companies. And that's, it's fine if you choose to go that way, but there's a lot of complexity you're introducing into your system without the benefit of integrations if you do take that approach. One of the beautiful things about being part of Symantec is we have a lot of different products that we work on and different product groups, and we have the ability to work together to share intelligence, to integrate our solutions, and to be able to provide you with a much more manageable and powerful solution by putting it all together. And you're working with us as a vendor, and you're getting delivered the visibility and control that you need in a fashion that makes it easy to use, and integrations that are easy to manage, and all of the benefits of putting it all together into a holistic solution. And then working with really important partners like Optiv. They are a really critical partner for us, and they do a lot of really good work to help with all of this so that you can have the solution that really fits what your needs are. So in this, I talked a lot about Symantec integrations in this presentation, but it's not just Symantec integrations that are available with our CASB solution. It also integrates with third-party solutions, and you can fit other pieces in place so that it really can morph and fit with what your needs are as you get your arms around cloud and you do that migration and you get the security in place that you need. And we try to do it with a way that really works and enables you what you're trying to do and delivers really industry-leading, top-of-the-line technologies and security to be able to help your organization stay safe and stay compliant and be able to operate on what it's trying to do without spending all of its time concerned about security. All right, at this point, this is my final thing. So Symantec's CASB is called CloudSock. And it delivers a lot of great solutions here. It'll give you visibility over the cloud apps you're using and what's going on in those cloud apps. It'll help you secure your data in a really efficient way and a really effective way, and it will help protect you against threats that are coming after you using the cloud as a point of action. So I hope you give it a try, and I'm going to pass the ball back over to my friends at Optiv to go on to the next section.
Thanks, Tina. Appreciate it, and thanks for that detailed view. So we're getting a little into the Q&A side here, so I'm going to wrap this up pretty quickly here. As Optiv does work with Symantec as well as many other solution providers, not just from a technology standpoint, but we also look at the overall governance profile, your strategy profile, and how these kinds of technologies fits in with overall strategies. From a technology standpoint, many of the use cases that Dina mentioned, we've actually done some efficacy testing against, as well as to some other solutions. So to help our clients differentiate between these solutions, because, obviously the integrated nature of everything that's working, we also want to make sure we do some validation against that we can also get you that information, as well as, some additional functions as Dina was just mentioning, that you can use these technologies to help you with other technologies. And what Optiv has done with that is a couple of components, in mainly an orchestration automation function, and how you can enrich your use cases for your incident handling and your incident response and your incident investigations, and whether or not you're using a Phantom platform or which was acquired by Splunk pretty recently. But we've done some testing with Symantec on some of their solutions and how we can automate some other functions, which again is an efficiency play. And we're looking forward to talking to you guys about the solutions that we can bring to bear with technologies like Symantec. And with that, I'm gonna cut it off here and go to Q&A. And Lindsay, do we have any questions? I saw a couple, but mainly around slide availability and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, we do have a couple of questions. Thanks, Todd, Brian, and Dina. That was really informative. Let's answer a couple of questions here in the last few minutes. The first one is, what does a typical deployment look like?
A typical CASB. Yeah, sure. A typical CASB deployment leverages three different ways of interacting. So let's start off with, I think the way CloudSock works is it's a SaaS offering. So it's a service that we offer to our customers, and what you do is if you adopt the Shadow IT monitoring and control functionality, that gets its information through log data. So you want to upload logs from a lot of different sources into your CASB. So your secure web gateways, your firewalls, you may want to upload your endpoint logs. You can use, if you're using SEP, you can use SEP Manager to do that with our system. And that gives you discovery and visibility and analysis over all of the different cloud services that your users might be using. The beauty of having using something like the SEP Manager, and that means you get visibility over remote usage. And then the beauty of all of that perimeter log data gives you all of that different activity that's coming out of your enterprise. So the better your visibility, the better off you are there. And that's how that discovery is taken care of. So the other thing you get is most organizations will deploy an API integration CASB to their important sanctioned cloud platforms. So if you're using Office 365, Salesforce, Box, and AWS, then you would activate an API-based integration. In CloudSock, we call them securelets. Within your CASB, you'd activate securelets, and then you would get direct visibility and monitoring and remediation between your CloudSock and your sanctioned apps and to manage those accounts. And that's really easy to deploy because all you got to do is authenticate in, gives you fantastic visibility, gives you good remediation, but it's a monitoring and remediation model because that's how APIs work. You also want to use the third functionality, which is a gateway. So that SaaS CASB, our CloudSock, will operate as a CASB gateway to do inline visibility, content inspection, threat protection, and policy controls over transactions between your end users and your cloud apps. And that's where you can prevent sensitive data from being uploaded or shared in a cloud app. And that's where you can get oversight over transactions with personal accounts or transactions with unsanctioned cloud apps or cloud apps that aren't robust enough to offer an API integration option. And so by combining all of that, you get the breadth of visibility from the API and the breadth of monitoring, and you get those preventative controls and the breadth of apps that you can cover in the gateway. So the combination gives you a really powerful view and a really powerful array of control functions as you apply your security.
It's a great point to make, Dean, and I'll just echo, especially from an Optiv recommendation around using both the API and the proxy integration. Just as we usually use the funny analogy of, I don't know if you guys have seen the Nationwide commercials where the guy's like, in there and he's like, hey, the guard says, hey, the bank's being robbed. And, and the bank manager says, well, please stop it. He goes, well, that's not my job. My job is just to tell you the bank's being robbed. So, I mean, you get those visibility functions, but if you don't have those control functions and those enforcement capabilities, you definitely lose some things. And as Dina can tell you, some of the APIs, depending upon, who the actual cloud provider is, aren't necessarily real time. In other words, you may get some answers like 5 minutes later saying, like, okay, somebody downloaded everything in Box. Which is great that you know that, or your GDrive or something. It's great that you know that and you have that visibility, but it doesn't necessarily help you in the end because, somebody just downloaded an entire, or exfilled a bunch of data. So anyway, I'm sensitive to time here, and we're at our time. So are there any other questions? And we have a bunch of material to get out as well. Lindsay, do we have any?
We do, and we'll have to follow up afterwards since we're right up on time. But just to wrap things up quickly, again, if you did not get your question answered, we'll follow up afterwards. That concludes today's webinar. Thank you for participating, and we hope you enjoyed the presentation. A follow-up email with the slides will be sent to you shortly, which will include links to review today's webinar recording and additional resources. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.